We're going to cover a lot of topics here, I think, Jess. So,
Yeah.
first thing, we're going to talk about your growing up years just a little bit. So, big dude. I assume you come from sounds like you come from an athletic family. Was basketball always your game, or when you were playing at WMU, did you think about anything else?
When you play at a small school, you have opportunities in every sport. Everybody gets a uniform. You grow up playing on the playground or at recess, doing everything. If it's football season, it's football. If it's basketball, it's basketball. Baseball. Wasn't a big track guy. But about 8th grade, I think we were playing against West Burlington, and 7th or 8th grade, and I had a pretty good game. I think we lost, but I remember my dad coming up to me after the game and saying, "Hey, you got a chance to make it." So that was kind of a profound moment in my life. And then the next summer, or that coming up summer, we decided to go to the 5-star basketball camp in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Back before the AAU circuit was the way it is today, you went to camps. And that was the featured camp in the country where if you wanted to be recruited, you had to go there, you had to be invited. My dad started working the phones and, hey, we got this 6'8" kid and they were from a small town, can he come? And they let me in. And I went out there and literally my dad and mom told me, we're gonna make an investment in this. If you go out there and do well, then we'll keep moving forward. And if you don't, if you find out you can't compete against all these great players, then we'll just play for fun. I thought it was a pretty practical decision. And I went out there, I barely made the all-star team. That obviously changes your life. You get home and the mailbox is full of recruiting letters. The first one was from Judd Heathcote at Michigan State. And the rest is history. That's what planted the seed. And then you start asking yourself, okay, I want to play football, but is it worth it? So I played basketball and baseball. And then I believe after my sophomore year, I broke my wrist one summer, and so I couldn't play a year of baseball. And so then my last year, I didn't play. I wish I would have. I always tell the kids, don't specialize. John Streif, the legendary trainer at Iowa, would always tell us to don't specialize. It's just too much wear and tear on your body. The relationships, the adventure, all that is important. That obviously message is not getting through today, but that's what changed it for me. It was literally a conversation with my folks in a 5-star camp, and that's what happened.
Now you say 6'8". Were you 6'8" as a freshman?
I think I was 6'6" as a freshman. So big fish, small pond. Had some wonderful teammates, but obviously Class A basketball, you're not going to get what you need to be recruited. Yeah. And no social media, no internet. You had to go find it. I mean, you had to make an investment, and we were very fortunate. I played with Clay Edwards, who's the coach at Winfield now. He ended up playing for Johnny Orr and Tim Floyd at Iowa State. Eric Rawson played Division I basketball. Bert Lappy ended up going to Northern Iowa. So we really had some good players come through there.
On Winfield Mount Union?
On Winfield Mount Union.
Yeah, that many D1 guys at
Yeah,
Winfield? Holy smokes, that's not fair.
Yeah.
You guys must have been cleaning up back then.
What's up, fellas? So Chuck Offenberger, who's a friend of mine, is AKA the Iowa boy, who used to write a column for the Des Moines Register, the Big Peach. At one time, I believe Chuck told me that, so we had Eric Rawson, Bert Lappy, Clay Edwards, myself, and then on the girls' side we had Linda Lappy, who played at Colorado, Katie Sorrell, who played at Northern Iowa. So at one time we had, 6 Division I players in the late 90s playing at the same time, which I believe he said per capita was the most of any community in the country.
It had to be.
Right? So, you can go 100 years without having a college player, a high major guy or gal in small town Iowa, and we had, we were loaded. So it was fun. We had a blast.
I was just curious, you said that your dad kind of mentioned that he was like, oh, he thinks that you can make it.
Yeah.
Was it the 6'6" that helped, or what was it that he saw that made him think that?
That's a great question. Obviously, the height is huge. I had good hand-eye coordination. I could feel the game, and I was a good passer at a young age. So I had the feel, and yet I always encourage parents who are wanting their kids to make it, and even the kids. If you go to an Iowa game or an Iowa State game, and 20 minutes before the game, go down and stand on the court and look at the people out there. That'll put everything in perspective, right? You've been there because you get courtside seats, and You know how massive Luka Garza is, right? Do you know Kalsher is not 5'8" for Iowa State? Like, he's the wing player, and what is he, 6'4" or 5"? These kids are huge. You see a Kofi Coburn, you reevaluate whether or not you want to invest all your time and money. Having size is obviously the number one thing.
That was my impression the first time I went to an NBA game. I was like, these guys are huge.
They're
like,
huge.
It's crazy.
They're huge. Ryan Bowen was a teammate of mine at Iowa's.
Okay.
And I just, when I was calling a Colorado State game a week or two ago, I went to a Nuggets game. He's an assistant coach for the Nuggets, and it's shocking how Joker, look, is he 7'2", and he's bringing the ball up, and he's averaging a triple-double. So it's a rare opportunity for these guys and girls who do make it. It's unbelievable, and for somebody like Caitlin Clark who dominates it, it's very rare.
When we chatted before, I know that you mentioned that Chris Street was a big reason why you chose Iowa. He got you there, but it sounds like if you had Michigan State after you so early, you had a lot of colleges probably coming after you. But Chris Street, maybe he was the guy that sealed the deal for you coming to Iowa.
There's no question, and it's amazing how many guys say that. It's amazing how many people connected with him. I was just on a podcast the other day with Kenyon Murray and Chris Kingsbury. I didn't realize the impact that Chris Street had on Chris Kingsbury. He just gave us a courtesy visit because he loved Gary Close. Gary Close, our assistant coach, had worked so hard, and he said he comes to Iowa on a visit. He wasn't coming, and he connects with Chris Street. And obviously, everybody knows Kenyon Murray they were like brothers, So to come from Battle Creek, so Chris did that for so many people. He was such a special person, and he had a genuine love for guys and concern for them, and he wasn't threatened. He never felt threatened by you coming to take his spot and this and that. But if you remember, Iowa fans who are old enough to remember Dr. Tom Davis, we pressed the whole game. There were a ton of substitutions. There was a criticism back then that Iowa kids couldn't play at Iowa. So there was a lot of heat on us. So there was a lot of, why are you wasting a scholarship on a kid from Winfield, Iowa, who hadn't played against anybody, right? It was like that. And Troy Skinner, Wade Lookingbill went through the same thing. Chris kind of broke through for us and changed the perspective a little bit. But Coach Davis was also very, he didn't make promises he couldn't keep. He would sit you in the room and he would say, look, I don't know if you're good enough to play here. You're going to have to get a lot better. Do you understand how tough this league is and this, that? So it was a little bit, it was somewhat easy to take offense. So I remember being in that room when you think you're pretty good and your dreams are coming true and you're being recruited by the Hawkeyes. And I remember sitting in that room and he says that, I don't know if you're good enough to play here. Well, my mom's offended. I'm kind of like, does he even want me? And my dad's like, oh, I love this guy. This is how you're supposed to talk to kids. Like, let's go, right? So I sort of opened up the window to go visit other places, and I also wanted to see other schools just because I loved Big Ten basketball and I love college basketball. So I got recruited by Michigan during the Fab Five era. Took a visit to Michigan. Loved it, right? Steve Fisher is walking me across, it was called Chrysler Arena at the time, I don't know what it's called now, right as I'm getting ready to leave and get back to Iowa, and he said, now look, he goes, I'm going to be real with you. So this is how recruiting was more back in the day. He would say, Jess, okay, you're going to play at Iowa 4 times in your career. Are you willing to walk into Carver Hawkeye in front of your friends and family and all your people in the state of Iowa wearing a Michigan jersey? And in my mouth immediately comes out, of course. In my heart, absolutely not. I always am thankful to Steve Fisher and Brian Dutcher for being real with me. And no, I'm not. I want to wear the black gold. I visited Notre Dame. Fran McCaffrey was assistant coach. He recruited me, and so we exaggerate the story to this day that Julia Roberts was at the game. The actress. She was dating somebody, a Notre Dame alum, and so there she is. She's sitting up in the crowd, and we're at the pep rally the night before, which they have at Notre Dame before football. So, long story short, I go up and introduce myself to her. Well, she says to me, sit down, because I don't think she wanted the attention, right? She's hiding out. So I sit down, and so all the guys down on the court think that, hey, Julian just is getting a date with Julia Roberts. So I'm like, that's the most epic visit in the history of Notre Dame basketball for someone who didn't sign.
Yeah.
Because even to this day, the former players Keith Tower, LaFonso, right? They'd be like, Settles. And Settles was right. It's hilarious. Now Fran to this day tells it. He adds even more drama to it. He says, "Oh yeah, that was all me. I knew Jess Settles, was coming, so we set it up and we set him." So those were really fun times. And I loved Iowa State as well. I loved Johnny Orr, what he meant to the program and the state, and what's up? Good job, girls. Proud of you. Proud of you. Good job, coach. So those are the Winfield girls. So yeah, I took those visits, and but come on, I had to wear the black and gold. Come on, everybody. There's only one place for me.
You can almost dream a better scenario if you're Notre Dame for a recruit to run into a movie star like Julie Roberts.
You're not kidding.
Totally.
You are not kidding. I mean, it was unbelievable. So yeah, I'm glad I took the visits. But come on, I grew up 40 minutes from campus. I gotta be a Hawkeye.
I imagine that we're doubling back on something we talked about already over the phone, but winning that Chris Street Award three times, that has to be, still 30 whatever years past, a singular special moment to do that three times in your college career.
It's by far the most important award that I've ever won, most meaningful. The older you get, I mean, we're not trophy and banner and jerseys on the wall people. I didn't want the girls to grow up with any of those false expectations or you have to do this. We just, they're in the attic somewhere. I have at the farm. Someday we'll get them out and maybe display them. I don't know. But that one was so meaningful, especially the first one. I played my freshman year. I'm supposed to play with Chris. One of the main reasons I went was because of him. That freshman year was, as all of our Iowa people know, it was brutal. We're trying. We're not good enough to win. We need him. We're young. We're playing hard. The Carver's sold out every single game. It's like a year of mourning, all combined with the business at hand. So at the end of that, to come from Winfield, to not even have a clue whether I could even play a minute at Iowa. I mean, that's how unbelievably tough it is. Thinking I could have a chance in a couple years, and then Coach Davis calls Chris Kingsbury and I in, and Kevin Smith gets kicked off the team, our starting point guard, and Chris Street is gone, obviously, and he's like, "You guys are gonna have to play right away. Like you're gonna have to play." And Chris and I are looking at each other like, "All right, like we can do that, right?" But then to get through the year, it was tough. It was tough.
Outside of that award that you won that few times, what would you say? I mean, famously, a lengthy career in Iowa City.
Yeah,
but,
right.
What were some of, or maybe one main highlight that you remember that's like, the best thing that you look back on that happened, maybe the fondest memory of?
I'm gonna get emotional. The Chris Street thing has exhausted me. It's been a very tough couple months because of that, right? The Big Ten special and all that. Another good memory. I remember the first time I went in to the locker room, and you know how your mom washes your high school, and then you have white and red, and then by the time the season's over, they're pink, right? Every mom knows this, right? Because you have to do the laundry, and you don't have someone there. So I remember coming in my freshman year, first game, and I come around the corner, and you have your special locker, right? And your name's up there, and your dream is to play there. And the jerseys all pressed and ironed, and it's the goldest color you've ever seen in your life, right? And you made it, and then you look across, and there's Chris Street's locker, and they kept it, and it's a tough pill to swallow. So that's like one of my best memories. So that was it. Obviously, playing in the Big Ten and competing against Bobby Knight and Gene Cady and going to war every night with those guys was amazing. But it was always an incomplete career and feeling without him around. So anyway, don't put all that in there.
Oh, it's all going in, baby.
Man,
That's good stuff.
man.
Yeah. Do you feel like in your time at Iowa, I mean, today we talk a lot about players who receive so much, grief from the fans or media or whatever, social media, online.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you got that same thing, or were you?
No.
I think Iowa players,
No.
Iowa fans loved you, but
Yeah.
how'd you feel going into other arenas?
Going into other arenas?
Other arenas.
Oh gosh, yeah, it was intense, buddy. It's, you always, it probably seems better when you look back now. It probably wasn't as good as you thought, but there weren't as many things to do at all. You didn't have the flat screen TV, social media. When I was in high school, we had 3 channels. People packed these arenas, and it was the golden era of the Big Ten, late 80s, early 90s. We're talking high flying Illini. We're talking Bob Knight. We're talking Judd Heathcote. Lottery picks around every corner. It felt like my freshman year. It was a lottery pick every single night. It was Glenn Robinson. It was Grant Hill. It was Alan Henderson. It was Vashawn Leonard. It was Juwan Howard. It was nonstop. But those places were hostile, and and you had to have thick skin. The good thing, as Iowa fans will appreciate, is that I had Chris Kingsbury, and they hated him more than anybody in the league. And he would go back and forth with them, so he took all the pressure off of us ordinary guys.
But it sounds like, though, you were about to say that Iowa fans, though, treated you well, or you had good.
Iowa, we had a unique situation there with the loss of Chris Street. It was so powerful what the people of Iowa did for us, in the mall, on the street. It was so devastating to everybody, and they, as you know from watching the Big Ten special, everybody felt like they knew him or he was related to them, and many people felt like he was their own kid. So they gave us such mercy those first couple years after that, even when we didn't play well, and they were so proud of us and what we had overcome. And yeah, look, there's pressure, but most of the pressure is on yourself wanting to perform and wanting to win and wanting to go to Final Fours and stuff. But there was a little break in there where they were like, we're for you no matter what. It was so amazing that about 10 years ago, I was reading an article or I was on a radio show, and somebody said, hey, this is the worst team that we've had at Iowa record-wise in the league since 1994. And I think I corrected that guy. I said, well, I was on the 94 team my freshman year. That's got to be a typo. And he goes, no, you had 3 or 4 wins. I go, no, we were at least 500. No, he was right. I thought we were winning. I thought we had a good year. Think about that. I had no idea we weren't any good because of it was sold out and people would give us a standing O, and even when we'd lose it, so it was amazing. I'll always be thankful to the people of Iowa for that, for getting us through that tragedy.
After your time at Iowa, if I'm thinking right, you went and spent some time overseas playing. Where all did you get a chance to play after college?
Look, I had back injuries. The day that I left campus, that was my last game.
Really?
Yeah, the Sweet 16 was my last game, and I have not played in an organized game since, I don't believe.
Okay.
So no, I just couldn't do it.
Just,
no, I go overseas once in a while with my family, but it's not to play basketball.
How tough was that for you to have that? Did you know at the time that was going to be your last game? Did you think that was going to be your final time on the court?
We played in the Sweet 16. We had a wonderful team that year. Dean Oliver, Kent McCausland, J.R. Koch, just wonderful team. Dr. Tom's last season. We'd won 2 games in Denver, and then we went to Arizona to play in the Sweet 16 against UConn, who went on and won it. Rip Hamilton, Khalid El-Amin. But our coaches had cleaned out their lockers before we went, and their offices. So it was kind of like there's no going back. And then we played that senior tour, the seniors tour, Sam Oakey, J.R. Koch, Jason Bauer, Kent McCausland and I, where we barnstormed the state. And then I had a pretty good offer, a tryout, in Australia. And I was training for that, and I was in bad shape just physically before that. And then once I started training, I really hurt myself again. And that was it. And that was it. It ended, and that was it. Barnstorming Iowa, that was my last hurrah.
Is it tough to acknowledge that, or was that hard at the time? I would think that if you had hopes of doing something at least overseas, that calling it a career after that would have been
devastating.
Hard.
Devastating, as still damaged to this day, because you get obsessed with the dream, you get consumed by it, And some of us are just built to not be able to release it. So it was devastating, no question, and it altered the course of my life. And yeah, you don't get too obsessed with what could have been, but it's only natural to think about it once in a while.
Does it help being still involved in the game? I mean, with you doing game calls and stuff like that, I have to imagine that being around it. I mean, is that helpful or is that harder to look back and be?
That's a great question, buddy. That's a great question. There's nothing like competing. I remember talking to Dan Gable. He was trying to help me through some of this stuff when I was in college because he knew how competitive I was. And I remember Dan telling me, he goes, look, as much as you love competing, coaching is better. But I just physically couldn't grind that out either. So I guess the next best thing has been to announce games. I enjoy being around the teams and the coaches and trying to bless the kids through the broadcast and that type of thing. But I personally have nothing's ever compared to running out in Carver and going to war in those games. It just doesn't compare.
So tell me what you've been doing since that time when your career ended. I mean, the last been almost 25 years now, I guess. I mean, what have you been doing in that time since then?
I farm for a living with my dad in Winfield, Iowa, and my uncle Gary Settles. That's what we do. We have row crops. We're corn and beans and John Deere tractors, and we're ready to go here in about 6 weeks. That's what we do. So that's been great. And a little side hustle in the winter with broadcasting games. I've got 3 daughters. They're awesome. We have a blast. My wife is a teacher, and she's coached a lot in her career as well, and she broadcast a game here tonight. So it was good to be here and see the Winfield girls playing, and it's been 30 years for me, so it's kind of come full circle today.
So, I mean, that's basically encapsulated the last 30 years or whatever, farming and broadcasting and stuff. That's the most of your time.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. Do you imagine that you're going to still keep doing the broadcasting for a number of years now?
There's no security in this business. I mean, I'm a freelancer. I just take what I can get, and you do the best you can. But it's a very tough business because there are a lot of people who want to do the job. So we will see. But I've had a good year, and I'm thankful for what I get.
What brought you to Pella? If you're farming over in Winfield, why are you in Pella?
My wife got a teaching job there, so I commute a lot, I drive a lot, but we don't have livestock, so I'm not totally tied down to it.
And so, how long have you lived in Pella now then?
How long we've been there? 4 years. 4 years.
Oh, is that all? Okay.
Yeah, 4 years.
Did you ever think about getting into coaching? Was that something you ever considered?
I was the head coach at Iowa Wesleyan University in Mount Pleasant for a couple years. Right. And I really liked it, and I love the relationships, and I love the bus trips and all that stuff that went with it. But they went from NAIA to Division III, which made it 10 times the work. And for the situation I was in, farming physically, I just thought it would be wise to set that down.
And done with coaching for good? I mean, would you ever think of getting back in, or?
I'm not sure. You never know.
You still get a chance. I mean, you mentioned that you're going to Colorado, so I mean, you get a chance to do some traveling.
No question.
Work too.
Yeah, no question. So on Friday night, I called the Colorado State. Okay, let me start. So on Friday night, I called the Colorado State-Wyoming game in Fort Collins, Colorado. On Saturday, I flew to Penn State, and on Sunday afternoon, I called Penn State and Rutgers, which was an incredible game, incredible comeback by Rutgers. And then I flew Monday morning. I took the 5:30 a.m. flight through Chicago, landed in Des Moines at noon, and then called Iowa State and West Virginia Monday night. So that's not typical, but yeah, I get to cover some ground.
Who's mainly hiring you for these broadcasts, or who are you doing?
I've been doing work for the Big Ten Network, for ESPN, and for FS1.
Okay.
So I'm a freelancer.
Whoever's paying you.
Right. That's right.
Geez, I don't know. Anything else you want to talk about, Jess? I've tried to cover everything.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say?
I think I'm good. Is there anything, girls, that we didn't cover?
Did I get it all? Anything that I should know about your dad?
I will say I loved playing for Tom Davis. Gary Close. It was the perfect situation for me. He's such a genuine guy. John Streif, the trainer, which you've heard all about, and John Streif will text me after every game I broadcast. Great job, way to go. How's the weather in Colorado? You know, so Dr. Tom will send me. I talk to him on text often, and so you know, as a parent, there's so many guys out there. Everybody talks about how great their school is and come here, but to turn your kid over, we would do it over again in a heartbeat. So I was very, very fortunate that I played for him.
You seem like just the guy that's almost Hawkeye to the core. It seems
Oh,
like
yeah.
more than a lot of people, just like grew up, you were in it, and since then just all Hawkeye all the time.
Well, I mean, I was 8 years old at the 1982 Rose Bowl. You know, I remember my mom and dad telling the stories about how horrible the football program was. I mean, I caught the wave of Hayden Fry and Dan Gable and Vivian Stringer and Tom Davis. I mean, think about that. So I'm listening to WHO. I'm coming to the state tournament. My aunts are playing the state tournament. I'm like right there when when we're winning, and so it just got in my blood, winning and Hawkeyes, and then all of a sudden, you know, 10 years later, I get to play for them. It's just you know, it's one of those stories that it worked for me.
Well,
Yeah.
I better get the rest of my stuff.